Okay, so welcome back to Huddle Up, guys. Today with us, we're gonna have Orkun from Citrea. And yeah, Orkun, just introduce yourself, man.
Hey everyone, Orkun here, introduce founder and the CEO of Citrea. My background is in engineering, but I've been leading the product and strategy on Citrea since basically we founded the product. So it's been a fun couple of years with Citrea. And the Citrea is basically the platform for Bitcoin capital markets. Technically, it is basically consists of few things. Technically, it's a ZK-rollup first on Bitcoin. And on top of it, we have our own native stablecoin called ctUSD and a bunch of applications in the ecosystem that people can basically use their stablecoins and Bitcoin in to do more with their Bitcoin, basically. Even it's swapping, borrowing against it, or just using structured products. Citrea is the base layer that enables all of those on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and for years now, we've seen that, Bitcoin has been branded this digital gold, this hedge against inflation, store of value and everything. But even me personally, I know that Bitcoin could be something more. And I also always believed since 2017 that Bitcoin could be something more. And I think you guys are trying to enable that. So, do you think that Bitcoin at this point in time, with all these institutions coming in and this massive narrative that Bitcoin is literally just for store of value, do you think that you guys can actually change the narrative when it comes to making it programmable, let's say the likes of Ethereum or Solana?
Yeah. I think, like you said, basically Bitcoin, when Satoshi introduced, he or she named the white paper as the peer-to-peer electronic cash, right? It wasn't even a gold. It was a store of value, obviously, but it was more importantly a medium of exchange, or maybe a unit of account in the future if everyone in the world that adopts this technology. So this vision, yes, slightly changed over the year, as more blockchains coming in and taking maybe some other narratives around the decentralized finance, which is all about cash and the money, right? But Bitcoin, because of its slow developments, and that comes from its decentralization, of course, it lacked to develop these sort of activities. And because of the slow block times and everything, it wasn't even feasible to use as cash, like Satoshi imagines. Because the technological adoption and the other improvements on top of it wasn't fast enough to just get to that point. So it's obviously slowly become a digital gold. I understand how people view it as a digital gold and store of value, but in the end, if it is just a store of value, it really doesn't make much more sense, because the advantage of Bitcoin is that not only you hold it, but you can easily transfer it, right? It's the same thing, analogy as gold, as all of the Bitcoin OGs did back in the day. You can also hold some gold, but transferring it is very painful. Swapping with someone is very painful. So Bitcoin also solves these problems, and currently it's overlooked. And also it's, again, like I said, it's more about the technological infrastructure that doesn't enable this. Even though, let's say you believe that Bitcoin is the store of value and it's the digital gold, so you want to get some liquidity against these digital gold, right? You want to borrow some cash against it so that you can run your daily finance. If all of your earnings are going into Bitcoin, then literally you don't have any option to do this without going to custodians. And there is no point using custodians if you are sold into the Bitcoin as the digital gold narrative, because then you are using something like regular money that federal governments issued. So even for those people, now they have very, very limited options. They have to go through a custodian to put their BTC and borrow some cash, which breaks the whole purpose. Or they have to go to, let's say, Rep BTC or Coinbase BTC, which is again just custodians, to get liquidity against their Bitcoin. So even though you are into the digital gold narrative, this Bitcoin stay as is doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't help you at all. So what we are building is, even for this purpose, it has basically faster block times, just 2 seconds, cheaper transactions, and basically, and more importantly, is on-chain set of smart contracts that can do liquidations, set LTVs. So trustlessly, you can borrow BTC against, borrow cash against your BTC, which again satisfies maybe the digital gold narrative, but it is not possible on Bitcoin L1 today. So yes, there is some background on how Bitcoin has started to be seen as the digital gold. We believe we can definitely change that. But even though some people can just still keep believing it, but we are also building for them as well, so that they don't have to use custodians and other basically custodial products to use their digital gold.
Yeah, and in the beginning you said that like the mission language of Citrea is Bitcoin capital markets, right? But from what I saw, like in earlier documentation, it was more of Citrea being the place to build anything on Bitcoin. So now my question is like, was this like a genuine like strategy pivot, or is it just like marketing and language packaging change? Because we've seen a lot of companies change their approach in marketing, especially with the institutionalization of crypto. Not mentioning all these Web3 terms, but like basically using the phrase capital markets and so on and so forth. So I want to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I think it was more of a evolution rather than just like repackaging, because when we first launched Citrea as a product, it was February 6, 2024. So it was basically over 2 years ago now. And we started building the product even before that. So when we first launched, obviously, we also had a set of beliefs that Citrea will satisfy. And those things changed over time, which in my opinion is a good thing. But more importantly, Citrea was a blank page, right? We built this first ZK-rollup on Bitcoin, literally the first ZK-rollup on Bitcoin, with the first trust minimized bridge ever in production. And back then, when we launched the DevNet for it, we needed applications to build on Citrea, because otherwise, even though we built the coolest technology infrastructure on Bitcoin, if there is no application, there is no user. And if there is no user, there's no point building it. So we said, okay, we want to get users when we launch mainnet. So what is the best way to get users is to have genuinely nice applications that is UX first, that is unique, and that is possible on Citrea and utilizes BTC. So our initial marketing was definitely towards developers. And since we started that marketing and shortly after it, we launched our incubation program called Citrea Origins, we, if I'm not mistaken, work with 6 teams now that they are all coming into the production. As already, I think 5 of them are in production. Only 1 of them is still in the progress of building. So those applications are actually come alive on Citrea mainnet when we started doing that campaign. So now looking into the back, we have all the primitives ready, right? We have the decentralized exchange, we have trustless money markets, we have stable coins, we have vault products. Okay, now what is actually this means that we have an ecosystem that satisfies the primitives of the Bitcoin capital markets, where you can utilize your Bitcoin for multiple things, even if it's trading, borrowing cash against it, or just generating yields based on some structured products and vault strategies. Then we have those, and we think that, okay, this is enough primitives to build on this Bitcoin capital markets narrative. Obviously, there's so much to build, but it was more of an evolution of the brand coming from a developer first that built those applications, and now we have the applications and scaling the user base, liquidity, and the distribution of the platform.
Yeah, now like you guys have been on mainnet for a few months now, and I understand like the technology is there, the infrastructure is actually working, you tested it out, and the primitives that you mentioned are there. But like, let's say I'm a founder, I'm a startup founder, and I wanna launch on Bitcoin, and then like I wanna see my app prosper, let's say, get users, get traction, but also function well. And I come to you and I say, convince me to come and build on Bitcoin rather than building on Ethereum or Solana, because the competition right now, I think, in crypto has never been this high ever. So like, just pitch me.
It's definitely a rightful question, and there's probably a very big room for other ecosystems to grow as well besides BTC, because when you look into different narratives, like if you want to launch, let's say, meme coin, then Bitcoin, obviously there has been some wave of like BRC20s, runes, which is meme coins are fun and people can use it. I personally don't use them or don't try to launch one, but if you go to the Solana, maybe people like them. So there is definitely a good growth opportunity on Solana. Obviously Solana, besides that, is building on the RWAs, stable coins, whatever. But on Bitcoin, there are more different things that matter. If you want to build, let's say, a privacy application today, Bitcoin is literally the easiest option to choose because it is a store of value that is definitely more store of value than the other assets and other networks, right? No one wants to have private meme coins so that they can keep in the pool for 5 days so it got mixed and it is anonymous now so that they can leave and sell. It's only like a matter of seconds or minutes, whereas in Bitcoin, it's people's life savings. Maybe they convert their salaries into Bitcoin, stack them into their wallet, non-custodially. So those people now like privacy. So all of their purchases are available on centralized exchanges, and then they can trace back to their cold vault addresses, which not only creates like a risk of basically they can get exploited, but also it is a real physical security risk as well, because those centralized exchanges have addresses, KYC data, and everything. So building a privacy application, for example, is you definitely should build on Bitcoin. And Citrea is the only platform that you can build it with minimal trust assumptions compared to all of other solutions that always has some sort of a multisig or trust assumption or custodian somewhere in between. So that's why, for example, this is one side. If you want to build a yield product, obviously stablecoin vaults has been taking off over like last 2 years maybe, but there is a genuine opportunity on Bitcoin where people are not very familiar with the strategies that can generate yield on Bitcoin, such as different option strategies, such as basis trading, even borrowing cash and running some stablecoin strategies with the Bitcoin without losing the upside. These things are still underexplored compared to the other stuff that's been built on other ecosystems on Ethereum or Solana.
Yeah, and since you mentioned privacy now, I have a couple of questions. I stumbled upon like the concept of proof of innocence, and from what I could understand, it uses ZK proofs to kind of like prove that the funds do not originate from sanctioned wallets, and so basically both be compliant but at the same time maintain the privacy, right? But at the same time, I feel like there's like these masterpiece appliances of cryptography that could be, you know, in this industry, yet the regulators kind of be blind to this, and they prefer like this blanket surveillance and like do these protocol level bans. So are they like very illiterate technologically regarding, for example, ZK proofs, and like how does this like regulatory reality in a way shape your approach to like building privacy features into the base layer of Citrea itself? And like to add to this, so a second question, could this be prone to like bot attacks? I'm talking about for example, sophisticated bad actors such as the Lazarus group on top of my head.
Yeah. So to give maybe some background on that, proof of innocence is a concept that we as a company invented. I think 3 or 4 years ago. This was the summer when Tornado Cash got sanctions. It's actually the first product our development company, Chainway Labs, produced. And it was our first open source project as well. So like you described, it's a perfect description. You use basically, let's say, a black box of deposits, right? Similar to the Tornado Cash. But instead of Tornado Cash, where everyone can come into the pool and everyone can leave the pool, and you can basically only prove your innocence by revealing all your transactions through a weaving key. After the sanctions, we realized that this basically thing of revealing your transactions to a regulator is not convincing enough. And it's not good enough for you as well, because anyone can ask you to do it. And if you don't do it, then you are basically now, let's say, guilty person. And if you do it, then you are completely exposed to the public. So while thinking about solutions, what we realize is that there is an issue where, for example, the governments or the treasury sees that a contract holds funds between coming from basically maybe innocent users or also hackers and complex groups like Lazarus Group, right? And even though you basically withdraw from there and now you are safe, your funds are still mixed. This is the one aspect. So we have to solve this issue of you shouldn't let these funds to be mixed with others if these basically incoming deposits are coming from illicit sources. And the second part is that even if you are threatened, for example, as that, okay, these funds are dark funds, then you should be able to say that they are not, but I am not telling you where my funds are originated from. So proof of innocence basically is a solution for it, where you can literally locally prove that your deposits are not coming from sanctioned addresses or any set of addresses. It's flexible, but you don't have to tell that which ones are your deposits, so that you are still private but also compliant. So this concept literally changed how people see privacy on Ethereum land. Like after basically tornado sanctions, these got implemented into Railgun. Quickly after, like a year after, privacy pools recently got launched, where Vitalik co-authored the white paper, and those projects are live today, basically facilitating privacy on Ethereum in a compliant way. So I definitely think that the regulators are capable of understanding these concepts. Obviously, there is no formal guide or there is no announcement that these things are completely fine, etc. But what we can see from the recent Treasury announcement, that they say that Mixers has, for example, legitimate use in privacy. And on top of that, my basically commentary is that these privacy pool-like solutions are improved versions of Mixers. They are definitely not Mixers, but they're literally privacy pools with an optional compliance feature where everyone can use if they are under threat, for example, from a Treasury or some other entity. So I definitely think these are important primitives to build on, and I also think that the regulators definitely understand those, and will be looking more closely to actually get those things in a completely safe line, similar to DeFi and other smart contracts.
What I've seen in crypto is that, I mean, we have so much technology, including zero knowledge proofs, that is not being utilized as it should. And I think one of the few applications that is using ZK as it should is you guys right now with this proof of innocence. But like, do you think we can apply this in a more general aspect of Bitcoin? Because I don't know if you know Mert on Twitter. The guy was like really preaching privacy on Zcash and everything, and then he started blaming Bitcoin for being super transparent. He started like pointing out the Bitcoin white paper where Satoshi said that in the future we need Bitcoin to be like more private and everything. So do you think that at this point where we are with regulations and everything else, could we see Bitcoin actually go full on private through ZK knowledge and ZK proofs? Because I think it could be there.
I think it is more of a community and culture question than a regulatory question, because the Bitcoin community tends to take everything like very detailed approach, and like everything has to have a very strict consensus, and there has been years of discussions before those consensus came true. And privacy is definitely important for almost all Bitcoiners, except like the corporate Bitcoiners like Sailor and others. I'm not counting, that doesn't see Bitcoin as an asset where people daily use, but more of an asset where corporates use for their treasury, and people still keep buying equities and preferred shares and whatever. So I don't think they really care and into this discussion, but actual people that is using Bitcoin in their daily life is definitely advocating for privacy on Bitcoin. But the protocol is, again, it is so primitive that adding a ZK proof verification mechanism is even complex without basically breaking some things. And even when you add it is not exactly a fully private, because if you have 10-minute block times and everything, it won't be still usable, right? So there is a bunch of improvements that needs to be made on Bitcoin L1 to get it into full private. We can obviously just start these discussions in community and like discuss this for 6 years, and it may happen. But I think the more practical approach is that people start building privacy on Citrea or basically similar layers, if there is any that provides a similar trust assumption, so that there's no custodians, there's no blacklist type of thing where your funds can be stopped. And those layers become more like an opt-in privacy layers where people can use their BTC. And if the community sees that, okay, really like the 10% of Bitcoin is on this layer in this privacy pool, then it means that there is literally a consensus that most of the users that is using Bitcoin actively wants their Bitcoin to be private, then these conversations can definitely accelerate. Because in Bitcoin, there's always this discussion whether this is a theoretical proposal or is there actually a consensus around it. And we think that the best way to show it is to just basically build those primitives on chain. And if people are using it, it really shows the demands, which can be improved by merging these technologies into Bitcoin L1. But if you're asking my personal opinion, I don't think this is happening in the next 6 years minimum. So that we should basically get this thing going on Citrea and show that there's actually a demand to a usable Bitcoin privacy.
Yeah, and this brings me to my next point, because like some Bitcoin maxis are very stubborn. It's crazy. Like I remember when ordinals came around, like a lot of these Bitcoin maxis, they were all over the Twitter feed claiming how bad this is for Bitcoin and so on and so forth. So I'm assuming that you've also had to face like a lot of criticism from some of these maxis that they don't want their precious old asset to change at any point in time. So how do you deal with these maxis? I mean, it should be easier than dealing with XRP maxis, at least.
Yeah. I would say I try to be more like open to ideas and open to debate, as long as it is like in the basically respectful. But there really is so cringe things on X that I keep blocking people sometimes because I don't want to deal with it, because I realize that I actually talked with this person 6 months ago and he or she didn't do any research and come back with the same points. Then there's no point in discussion, right? But I try to be more like explain things to the people. We have a lot of blog posts and articles on our X that explains things to the people. So I'm not really sure if it is worth debating, but it's definitely important that everyone understands that Bitcoin is a permissionless protocol and everyone runs their own nodes. And if there's something is able to get mined, that will be mined. Like there is no way that you can just like erase that from the history, or you can make that not happening. If something miner can include into the block, someone will find a way to do it. This happened with ordinals. It was completely a side effect of Taproot. I think everyone is accepting that, but there is no way of reverting this change without breaking things, or there is no way preventing this from happening without changing anything. So there's nothing we can do about it, and this is what makes Bitcoin good, right? No one can alter the rules as they want to, so that we can make sure that our money is safe. And ordinals is something like that. And one of the side effects of the Taproot was ordinals, but on the other side, another side effect of it is BitVM, which is basically a technology that enables today how Citrea verifies the ZK proofs on Bitcoin. So it's literally a good thing. Like it is a technology that enables ZK verification on Bitcoin, and this is a side effect of Taproot that also ordinals is a side effect of. So they look like two completely separate things, but in fact they're coming from the same resource. And even on top of it, Citrea is built on top of these two primitives where you can put your rollup data into Bitcoin, which we inspired from ordinals, and you can verify these proofs in Bitcoin, which is basically what we built called BitVM. So those changes are always have side effects, but they're not always bad or not always good. But the good thing is that and everyone should expect that there is nothing we can do about those changes, and it will always happen. So I tend to just ignore most of these conversations nowadays because I'm so tired about it. But generally, we try to be respectful of what exists today, what we can do. We built on basically this primitive of inscriptions to put rollup data. We could, for example, try to change Bitcoin to have a separate blob space similar to Ethereum so that rollups can be cheaper. But we said, okay, this is what exists today. We will just build it. If there is demand, then the community will understand that this kind of change might be helpful for developers and users of the network. If not, then we don't need to just spend years for this change. So this is generally the principle we have, is to build with whatever we have in Bitcoin today, and don't ask for or don't wait for any changes which can block the development and adoption of the protocol.
I mean, even in crypto, although we're like this innovating industry in today's world, I think people are scared of change, and that's what's happening with Bitcoin maxis as well. But I think change is good, especially when we're building something new.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just like the good thing about Bitcoin is, again, that it can change and it should change, but it's good that there are people asking questions. and making sure that every development is happening in the right direction. Unfortunately, this slows things down, or you have to deal with people who doesn't have any clue but wants to talk. But still, it's a good thing that we are protected from, as like unlike other ecosystems where a foundation can push a change and everyone must adapt or they will be kicked from the delegation program, right? There's no such thing in Bitcoin. You have to convince users, you have to convince miners, you have to convince exchanges for a change. So everyone makes sure that the change is in the top quality, even though there's been side effects like Taproot and Segwit. But those things happened in consensus, and it's how it should be.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that Citrea, you're building like everything in Bitcoin right now, but when it comes to more complex markets and even governance models like the futarchy or like models as prediction markets are right now, that's really hot and trendy in the market. Do you think we're close to seeing that directly on Citrea, let's say this year or next year? Because I think we need more competition right now. It's just 2 or 3 of them just taking all over the volume, and if we have one on Bitcoin, I think we have enough whales to just like get the whole industry.
Yeah, that's true. I think generally what you say is true for the crypto ecosystem overall. I saw a post from the founder of DeFi Llama, if I'm not mistaken, is that most of the DeFi verticals, usually the top 2 winner takes most of the share, like Tether and Circle, and stablecoins like Ethereum and Solana, smart contract chains. So it's what's happening on the prediction markets as well, Polymarket and Kalshi, which they're leading the volumes and basically the user counts. But I think when it comes to the prediction market, there's more stuff to build besides just binary prediction markets. One of the teams we supported in their accelerator is called Signals, for example. And what they do is that you can bet on the Bitcoin price in ranges. You can literally predict the Bitcoin price within ranges instead of binary options. So you can select that, okay, today Bitcoin will close somewhere between 65,000 and 75,000. And based on the distribution of other bets, now you have an outcome. If you win it, you will get basically that outcome. If you lose it, it's similar to the prediction markets. Other users are winning it. But unlike a binary prediction market, they literally have a curve that adjusts based on the other user's prediction, and it's dynamic. So these type of unique things, I think, is more important rather than trying to build, let's say, a prediction market that is binary but uses Bitcoin. I don't think this is a big enough change to go into the mainstream, but if there is more novel things such as what I described, then you have a better chance that that thing is winning, and it's just coincidentally powered by Bitcoin, which makes it even better because people have to adapt it, or they pay fees indirectly to Bitcoin ecosystem by using those applications. And when it comes to the governance, there is no active project, if I'm not mistaken, that is working on like the edge of governance. I really like the futarchy. I've tried to follow it. I still don't think there is enough people voting on the proposals, etc. But it is at least a good experiment that shows how it can be done besides the regular governance. So there's definitely all the things that you can do on Citrea. Obviously, we have some bandwidth that we have to work with a select set of teams if we are working closely, otherwise everyone can deploy as well. But we try to be basically supported unique things that is powered by Bitcoin so that it brings in users organically, and those users are become basically a Bitcoin user without them noticing it.
Now, I want to ask a question, and I apologize if it may sound like a bit ignorant or arrogant on my end, but some of the best use cases I've seen in crypto have come from founders that have either been exposed to developing countries or have experienced hyperinflation. And now I know you said you're from Turkey, and has that in any way impacted your decision making and the whole strategy behind Citrea and its uses?
It definitely did. My crypto journey started with a very relevant development around this, is that I was funding my basically musical education when I first started the college through an on-chain funding platform. that is based in Turkey and basically uses a Turkish lira stablecoin and all like the other networks. I think it was on like Ethereum or ZK Sync-Lite or whatever to transact. So this was my first, literally real world use case of crypto. And it was because that Turkey is an emerging country that doesn't have a proper and effective working, basically a donation system where intermediaries takes a lot of cuts, etc. So this has been a solution to that. So there's really my story personally starts from that, and growing in such a country, you see that how store of value is not actually what government prints and gives to you, because most of the Turkish people, I'm sure it's similar there as well, but they keep buying gold and putting it to their home, right? It is not even on the bank account, or it is not like tokenized gold or anything. They literally go buy gold and get it into the home, put it into a safe. That's because over the years they literally experienced one of the worst devaluations of an asset, so they are used to it from maybe 50 years ago as well, so they keep holding gold. And Bitcoin here and other store of value assets provides a really good alternative where they can do it even more safely with a proper inheritance framework and everything that can work in real life, that is much more safe to physical attacks and everything. So there's really an opportunity to grow this sort of a store of value narrative first in the region, and after that definitely a medium of exchange, because it is the secondary effect of it. Once you have a better asset to hold, now why you just don't spend it and replace it instead of try to get another asset which you cannot hold because it loses value all the time. So yeah, it definitely affected both my personal, how I started crypto, how I see the world, and it also affects that how we got more believed into Bitcoin, and it's basically functionality and the values.
Yeah, and do you think that the West and all Western crypto teams maybe have some misconceptions or misunderstandings about like user behavior in countries that do experience high inflation? Because I remember last year we were in Solana Crossroads and we saw a lot of these products featuring very degen style products, for example, with very high APY but not stable and so on and so forth. And on top of my mind, I was thinking like this would not work on Turkish people maybe, because I had the feeling that people there are maybe less risk averse and prefer something more stable due to the fact that they do experience high inflation. I mean, at that time, I remember in 2021, I was in Turkey, like you could buy a full meal with less than like €1.
It's now at least like maybe €20 or something. So it's definitely much more expensive than that. But yeah, you are right. I think most of the teams, if they're Western based, they are not really understanding the problems of what's going on in the other parts of the world. I'm just like excluding all the teams who does that. They definitely do a big job. That's definitely doing more than Citrea as well, as we just started. But yeah, most of the teams that we talk to are not aware of these problems. It's funny because I was in the conference on Singapore, I think last year, and I had 2 back-to-back meetings. One of them, we talked about basically how mortgage can be on-chain. So the American people can use on-chain to do their mortgages and everything. So it's definitely a problem. Maybe there is a solution for it, and maybe there's a problem too. But that is completely a Western way into looking at it. And the other, I was talking with one of our team members about Philippines teams, that is a team from Philippines that's working on Citrea and building basically text-based Bitcoin transactions where you can just text to your friends over phone and the Bitcoin transacts together with the message instead of having a cellular data, because the cellular data is not stable in most of the regions around there. So it's completely 2 different set of problems, right? One of them is completely focused on the financing, the lenders, the borrowers. And on the other side, people just want to transact peer-to-peer using the cash, which is Bitcoin in our case. So there's definitely 2 different set of problems. Sometimes they converge. Some of these regions use dollar as the store of value, for example. So having a stable yield account for it makes sense. But if you go to the West, there's different problems about tokenizing equities, having 24/7 trading of them, which is not really a priority for most of the other regions in the world. So yeah, it's 2 different, or maybe more than 2, basically different set of problems that needs to be solved maybe they're equally important, but they require different expertise and different research on those topics.
It's funny because I've noticed this with many people that I talked to regarding this specific issue. Like in like the East, and not only the East, like any country that's not in the West specifically, the most users, I mean the most applications that have a lot of users, they're focused on actually making life easier for an individual. It's like peer-to-peer transactions, just having USDT or a stronger currency access like through their phone. So it's really interesting to me. But yeah, I'm gonna change the direction of the conversation like completely, and I want to talk about like Chainway Labs. And we mentioned the degen culture that we have in crypto right now, and we've had it for like 3 years now, at least 3 years. So you guys at Chainway Labs are like quite more academic in a sense, that you guys are more serious. You guys, you build things that are actually complex to build, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So how are you guys like trying to, how are you fitting in this current state of the market? Is it hard, and what's your approach to actually appealing to the industry?
I think like I would say most of the DeFi stuff to me is, again, they're complex and they're important, and they had to be built, and that is important for Citrea as well. What we are building is more complex on the infrastructure level because of the involvement of the mathematics, ZK proofs, Bitcoin scripts, and the code base. There are basically maybe even more complex protocols out there for sure. This has been our focus to basically get this going, because it is literally the primitive you need to build applications on Bitcoin. So we had to build it. There is no workaround to not to build this product. So we built it, but we definitely want to also get our focus back on the application layer for sure. Whether that's DeFi, that's privacy, we want to be more involved and talking with the users as well, besides just being the application layer that does infrastructure and doesn't do anything else. So we were more on that side, but I think equally we had good run of like the ecosystem, BD, marketing side of things too, getting all of these teams to build on Citrea, getting them live to the mainnets, trying to make those products perfect through user experience improvements and marketing and growth strategies. So we definitely did more on the user side, but we want to be more involved on those side. It is more of a long-term view from our perspective that, okay, we spent almost 3 years to build this infrastructure. We have been working on our stablecoin for so long, and it got launched together with the mainnet. Okay, now we also have a distribution and an on-ramp for the protocol, basically. And the third one is that we should look into the applications and try to improve them to talk with more users and get them onboarded to Citrea. So it's definitely over maybe 10 to 20 years goal to even achieve slightly. There has been some short-term products that we think before starting Citrea as well. But we realized that building on Bitcoin and getting this primitive to life is more beneficial to everyone else, even more than us.
And what's like the best criticism that you have received from a Bitcoin holder or user? And like, has there been a time where you received criticism and we're like, this guy has a point, let's implement that?
I think technically wise, there has been multiple probably, and that I'm not really remembering. But from the usability wise, there's been definitely like some questions around that. Okay, like a Bitcoiner who wants to be safe wants to be on Bitcoin L1, and a Bitcoiner who wants to get yield is using Ethereum. This was one of the criticisms we got. So who you are building towards, right? But I think it's just like not a good idea to leave everything as is until Rep BTC or Coinbase blows up and all of these Bitcoin holdings of people got lost, which Rep BTC holds a significant amount of Bitcoin right now, and those things can basically be lost because it is held under a custodian key that can get lost anytime or can get seized or whatever can happen in US. So those things are definitely not an issue today, but it doesn't mean that these are not perpetually safe things. So we should definitely built for these things. Maybe some Ethereum users will basically realize that, okay, this is even safer than what I'm using as Rep BTC or Coinbase BTC or other custodians, so I should start using it. And as we develop more liquidity and applications, then a safe Bitcoin L1 user can also say that, okay, this rollup has been live for 3 years, it has audited, it has the ZK proof infrastructure where no one can alter the transactions, so it's mathematically sound, and there's been no issues for 3 years, and there's a bunch of people using it, so I can also use it. So it's again a long-term goal, but definitely short-term it is not as easy as most of the other maybe opportunities that we could build on, because it is somewhere in between those two categories, which is long-term important but short-term not as obvious as maybe building on meme coins or DeFi.
Which actually brings me to my next point, because I was going to ask, who do you consider the true competitor set? Would it be like other Bitcoin L2s or like Ethereum L2s that compete for Bitcoin liquidity?
I think not other Bitcoin L2s. There are not many of them, unlike like last year's boom where there's been a lot of quote-unquote Bitcoin L2s, which none of them get even to the mainnet. But I would say it is not also Ethereum L2s, but generally Ethereum itself as well. Because Ethereum is where most of the BTC liquidity base is, most of the Coinbase BTC liquidity is there outside of Bitcoin ecosystem. So our initial goal is to get those Bitcoins back to Bitcoin through Citrea, so people don't actually lose their options to use DeFi with their Bitcoin, but they don't have to give away their keys to a custodian while you're doing it, so that they can use Citrea. And secondary is that there's a bunch of people in DeFi, which previously I was one of them, is that I'm using DeFi, but I'm not using my Bitcoin in DeFi because I don't want to use Rep Bitcoins. So Citrea basically provides a platform for myself to bring my Bitcoin and use it in DeFi, similar to how I do in other assets. And maybe in the long run, I don't even need those other assets because I can do everything I can do with them with my Bitcoin. And the third one is for sure the Bitcoin holders, who, even though they don't want to do DeFi, they can do more with their Bitcoin, even basically a better multisigs or better family accounts or better inheritance frameworks or better spending accounts with spending limits and account abstraction and passkeys, so they don't need even a seed phrase. So those are the things that are more like in our user base, which you can also think that the competitors are derived from there.
Yeah, now again, I'm gonna be spinning the conversation 180 degrees because I really wanna like go deeper on the mainnet of Citrea. Like, how is that going for you guys? What challenges have you seen after the mainnet went live and everything?
As you know, the market conditions are the best, but that is a good opportunity for us, we believe, because that provides us an opportunity to talk with users one by one, so they are not coming in like billions of them trying to bot this thing or trying to farm it, etc., so that we are not actually aware of analytics or the users. So now we can actually talk with users, see their feedback, and get it implemented. When we launched over a month ago, I think that week we shipped at least 5 updates to our bridging page, because every day we were receiving feedback about something is not working properly or something is maybe missing or something can be improved. So we have been just keep improving it and pushing into the production. That's been really important for us to get those user instructions, because after some point we become blind, right? We are using our own product for 2 years without basically no one else is using it or giving feedback, and now we are going into the mainnet and realizing that we did a bunch of stupid things that we could have just fixed maybe in minutes before going into the production, but we cannot determine that without third-party users coming from different operating systems, different parts of the world, with different connection speeds and with different habits, more importantly, are using the product. So we have been improving it a lot. This is very also relevant to our ecosystem projects, where they have been just like keeping our feedback and user feedback and iterating on it very quickly. So the liquidity, etc., is completely organically now bootstrapping. There's, I think, around 30 BTC bootstrapped, and there's more than $1 million worth of ctUSD minted itself, coming from mostly Ethereum users and their USDC. And we also, on the other side, we have been working with institutions for so long, and those are the things that takes long as well. So we are basically onboarding more asset managers and creditors to use this structured products and basically money markets that is actually secured by the first trust minimized BTC to generate yield on their stable coins in the form of ctUSD. So we've been working on them a lot, and it's definitely getting accelerated. We got our ecosystem projects into mainnets such as Satsuma, Citrea, Signals, Selfie, recently Crest. They got into live, the privacy application, they're in closed beta right now. And on top of that, what we done is launch some structured products with the top asset managers, such as the one we launched with Kirak on Accountable, which provides basis trading strategy on Bitcoin. So the Bitcoin users can actually access to an institutional grade yield right now with their BTC that is unlike basically previously not available to them. So these things are what we are working on. We definitely still have a bunch of other things to build and improve. But based on our bandwidth, we are just like working at maximum for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's a saying that goes like bear markets are for building and shipping. And I think you guys are actually doing that right now.
Yes, that's always been us. We bull or bear, but definitely being on the bear market allows us to be more direct with the users and the feedback, which is a good thing for the early stages of the product.
Yeah, and I know it's not going to be easy. Like the curve is quite steep when you think about it, because every single investor that you ask, like, what's the strategy that you use to be successful in trading and stuff, they all say to DCA Bitcoin or like hold Bitcoin and you will be fine in the long term and so on and so forth. But so I want to ask you, besides the obvious that we need people to understand that there's other use cases for Bitcoin rather than just holding and leaving it in your cold wallets and whatever, what does like this Bitcoin app layer look like in 5 years? Like what's the dominant user story in 5 years?
I think like in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there are a few things that matters, like the Bitcoin itself, right? The stable coin that allows you to access the Bitcoin ecosystem and the fiat ecosystem at the same time. But also there's a bunch of other assets that are associated with Bitcoin, but definitely not on chain, such as the treasury companies and their equities and their preferred shares like Stretch, which is everyone is talking about right now, or basically other offerings like hash rate derivatives, hash rate markets where you can buy and sell hash rates, maybe give loan to the Bitcoin miners collateralized by their future mining rewards. Those things are completely off-chain today because the Bitcoin ecosystem cannot support it and other ecosystems are too busy with their own thing, but there is no unified platform where you can utilize all of these primitives to generate yield on your Bitcoin or get financing against your Bitcoin or trade your Bitcoin. So it's all about that, but there's still multiple products that can be built and not just the XM money market. So these are the things that we are focused on to get them on chain. Why there cannot be a basically application on Citrea where it accumulates BTC from fees and it can provide something similar to the Stretch where the holders have a fixed, basically they invest into fixed amounts but they get fixed yield on top of it that is derived from the Bitcoin holdings of the project. So these things can be implemented in smart contracts as well, and they can also be operationally more efficient than the off-chain entities and the equities. So there's still a lot of things to build, and those are the things that we are more focused on for sure for the next 5 years.
You mentioned trading hash rate, but what about prediction markets on hash rate? Because
yeah, that's. I mean, there is also a physical bet you are doing it. Like if you are predicting it will go down, you can also maybe not buy mining machine right now and buy it later, etc. So there's definitely even a derivative of derivative you can build there in the form of prediction markets.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, well, Orkun, thank you so much for joining us today. Personally, I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I don't know about others, but yeah, we're glad that we managed to have this, and you basically explained a lot of stuff that I wasn't aware of. And if there's any traditional Bitcoin maxi in the comments that doesn't agree, I will say this: please do your due diligence before attacking us, right?
No, it's good to have discussions. So if there's anyone who wants to debate about those things, I'm always available on X. So feel free to tag me or DM me.
Yeah, but like debate leads to change, and that's something that they don't want. So.
Yeah, that's the hardest part about building on Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Orkun, once again.